All right, good afternoon, everyone. It is a dreary day here in Michigan on this October the 19th. I want to welcome everyone for joining our call today. My name is Dan Sugg, and I am with Michigan First Credit Union. And please let me thank you for first taking time out of your day to attend our virtual home buying seminar, and super excited about today's topic. If I could, I'd like to go over the agenda today. If Zareen will bring that up, awesome. Our agenda includes introducing myself, which I just did. I sit here at Evergreen. If you guys come to the Evergreen branch for Michigan First, right behind the coffee shop with the rest of the mortgage team that is located here. We have two great speakers, Anne-Marie and Michelle, which we'll get to in a minute. And our topic today is Mortgage 101, the nuts and bolts kind of what mortgage is all about. And we certainly appreciate you taking your time to cover these topics today. It's not something that we do enough of. We'll spend the most of our time, the majority of our time today, really talking about those tips and tricks that are aligned with Mortgage 101 and what that involves. And then lastly, we'll have our three takeaways and our closing remarks. And if we have time, I promise we'll try to get to some question and answer. With that, though, make sure you use the chat box. If you have a question, just go ahead and put it in at any time. Or if a light bulb goes off, make sure you do that at any time during the call. That gets recorded. And even if we don't get to them, which we do have somebody monitoring the chat box, if we don't get to them, somebody will get to you after the call. So without further ado, let's get into our introductions. Anne-Marie Rogers, loan officer here at Michigan First, is joining us today. And Anne-Marie's been on the team for quite some time now, and she's no stranger to our webinar series. So Anne-Marie, if you would, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you bring to our membership.
Hi, thank you, Dan. Well, I've been in the mortgage business since the late 90s. And my specialty is working with people who are first-time home buyers. I want to make sure that people really understand the process and feel comfortable entering into the process. It can be a cumbersome and often complicated process. So it's always important for people to feel that they know what's going on throughout the home buying experience.
Yeah, thanks. And Anne-Marie does a very good job, especially on those first-time homebuyer programs, and really all kinds of loans. But Anne-Marie is a great loan officer of ours. So switching gears a little bit, Michelle Martin has joined us from Keller Williams Realty. She is a realtor, and I'm not really sure where you're at, and maybe she'll share that with us, but here in Michigan for sure. Michelle, tell us a little bit about yourself, your business, and what your strong points are and what you bring to our membership.
Okay, thanks, Dan. I'm actually located right now in Grosse Pointe Park, and I work all over Michigan, but mostly in the Detroit metropolitan area. My background is in labor relations, and I worked at the UAW for 22 years. I was an organizer for a number of years, and then I did contract negotiations, and then I was a communications director and responsible for all of the communications platforms that the union had. And then I left the UAW in the big upheaval in 2015. And then I studied and got my real estate license. And now I work for Keller Williams, which is the world's largest brokerage. We have a network across the world. So if you know folks that are in the market, we can also refer to other agents around the globe, actually. I'm dedicated to having an ethical and honest and fair practice and helping, especially first-time home buyers. I've worked with Anne-Marie on that, and I've been a member of the credit union for, I hate to say this, it sounds old, maybe 40 years almost.
Well, wonderful. And thank you for joining us today. I got to believe really 2 points out of your introduction. One, you must be really glued to kind of the news and what's going on with the UAW today. Number one, and I bet those negotiating tactics that you learned really come in well in serving your clients in that real estate process. So
I was wondering how many members on this call might be also UAW members, but then I thought, well, they're probably on the picket line, so they don't have time to join the seminar.
All right, well, let's jump in. And I want to, again, thanks everyone for joining us today. You know, mortgages are or can be a very complicated process. So our job today is to just try to cover the base of what it is that really is a mortgage focus 101 and a real estate focus 101 as it comes to the mortgage. So we're going to start with Anne-Marie, I think, today. Anne-Marie, so give me, I keep hearing this term, first-time home buyer. What does that mean? What is that definition of a first-time home buyer?
Well, technically, a first-time home buyer is somebody who has not owned a primary residence in the past 3 years. So somebody can own an investment property and be a first-time home buyer, or they could have owned a primary residence more than 3 years ago, or 10 years, or 20 years. But if you haven't had your primary residence in the past 3 years that you owned, you are considered a first-time home buyer.
Yeah, and many of the programs, we call them the first-time homebuyer programs today. They do have caveats carved out that you have to be a first-time home buyer. So just because you've owned a home in the past doesn't mean you can't again once be a first-time home buyer. Correct? That's correct. Okay, sorry, that was a question, Amber.
I'm sorry.
No
Thank you.
worries. Switching over to Michelle. Michelle, so we've heard this throughout my career, my almost 30 years. So what, I guess the question is, why do I need a realtor to buy a house? Like what is it that the realtor really brings to the transaction?
Well, I know most folks love Zillow and think they can do a great job finding a home on there, but
Sorry, guys.
okay.
Completely my fault, Michelle. Keep going.
Oh, that's okay. So realtors are licensed professionals. They're licensed by the state, and we're required to have continuing education every year. So we're up to date on all the laws and regulations. We have access to the multi-listing service, which gives you a broader area to search from. We are knowledgeable about certain areas that you may want to buy in. We can help you understand the market in that particular area by looking at other home sales. And we're here to guide you through the process and to help answer any of your questions and to be negotiating on your behalf.
Yeah, it is a legal contract that we enter when you offer the home for sure. And to your point, there is a lot of access to real estate on the internet, but really the truest source of that is the MLS, right? That's where it begins. And not all of it really ends up on the internet, correct?
Yeah, that's right. And also, I mean, as realtors, we're required by the state of Michigan to have at least 2 hours of legal training a year. Most of us have a lot more than that within our own brokerage. So we keep up to date on the regulations, and then the MLS is updated all the time. And so a lot of the other congregated online search sites may not have up-to-date information.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Anne-Marie, switching back to you real quick, we talked about the first-time home buyer. So what are some of the advantages that maybe a first-time home buyer has?
Probably the biggest advantage of first-time home buyers is that on conventional loans, they can have a down payment as low as 3%. We also offer the MSHDA program, which is for first-time home buyers not purchasing in what they call targeted areas, because MSHDA allows people who aren't first-time home buyers to buy in targeted areas, but they can get up to $10,000 in down payment assistance, which is a huge benefit because oftentimes first-time home buyers, that's their biggest obstacle is the money to close, because it can, run into the thousands of dollars. So having $10,000 toward that is an enormous benefit for first-time home buyers.
Yeah, certainly there's a number of different municipalities that work with first-time home buyers and provide extra incentives, but also the ability to put less down is usually reserved for a first-time home buyer too. So in some cases, 1% or 3%, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
Having as little as 3% down is an enormous benefit, because if you're not a first-time home buyer on a conventional loan, the minimum down payment is 5%.
Yeah.
However, you can always use an FHA loan, which is backed by the Department of Housing and Urban Development, and that has 3.5%.
Yeah. And I always like to interject, especially on these one-on-one calls, where the difference between somebody renting and somebody buying after year 5. So if I was renting and Anne-Marie was buying, the net worth is 40 times that value after 5 years because of the equity that you build up in the home that you own or potentially could build up. So 40 times higher. So sometimes getting into that house is the obstacle, but really that's the hardest part. You really work past that and whatever it all costs, get into that and then start to build your wealth. And that's generational wealth, really. Switching back to Michelle. So how much do I have to pay you to help me find a house, Michelle?
Well, buyers don't pay anything for the agent's services. Typically in Michigan, The commission is paid by the seller and it's factored into the cost of the house, and then it's split between the buyer's agent and the seller's agent and their brokers. So it doesn't cost the buyer anything. And agents don't get paid until there's a sale.
Right, so at the closing. So, and so it would really be considered a seller expense in that point, right?
It is currently,
Yeah.
it's a seller's expense.
It comes out of their proceeds of the sale. Wow, all right, cool. So Anne Marie, we talked about a couple of things for our first time home buyers, but I really want to talk about probably the hottest topic today, and that's interest rates. Outside of housing availability, what are the different interest rates and how do they affect the mortgage payment? Like, why does it matter if it rises up?
Well, an interest rate is important because the interest rate is going to determine what your principal and interest payment is going to be. And it's going to vary with the market. It's going to vary based upon a number of factors such as the program that you're in, the amount that you put as a down payment, what your credit score is. Just for instance, our MSHA rates have a set rate that's established by MSHA, whereas the rest of our interest rates can change day to day according to the market trends.
Yeah, based on the economy and some
Yes.
influences that are going on there. Obviously, rates are much higher than they were maybe just 2 or 3 years ago, but historically speaking, they're not as high as they've ever been, certainly. I was just at a conference this past weekend, and there were some gentlemen there and ladies there speaking about interest rates being close to 20% in the 1980s, and people still bought homes. Of course, the sales prices were much lower then, but so there is an opportunity to buy today, correct?
Absolutely. There's certainly
and
a
if you
great
do end up
opportunity.
maybe being in a financial situation where the interest rate seems high to you, certainly there is always the opportunity to refinance when the rates do come down. So let's switch a little bit and go back to Michelle. So, I've had a very fortunate in my career of owning 3 different homes, 3 different primary residences, but how long does it take to buy a house? Like how long should I be planning and preparing to buy a house?
Well, I think the most important prep time is your saving for your down payment and getting your pre-approval. Once you're through with that process and we know what you can afford, then we can start looking at houses. Typically, from the time you find a house and make an offer and it's accepted, it's about 45 to 60 days to close the transaction and to buy the house. But it can vary. And I'd say the average number of houses people see, some people find their house on their first visit. The average number is about 10 in this country. Some people have more and some see less.
So 10 different viewings to find
10 different homes.
house. Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
if you find a home that you like, I recommend a second viewing of that house, a second showing to make sure it's what you want.
Yeah, that first one can sometimes have a filter on it, right? You see one thing you love and then you didn't pay attention to anything else in the house. So
I mean, I've had clients where I'll show them 5 houses in a day and then they choose from those because they can tell after 5 houses what they really want.
yeah, interesting. I think the important point you made there is finding out not only what you can afford, but what payment you're comfortable with, because you do have other expenses that go into that, but really getting that pre-approval up front, which doesn't cost money. There's nobody really writes a check to get a pre-approval, and it's a process. I would even ask Anne Marie, what's the longest you've worked with somebody trying to get them to pre-approve, Anne Marie?
Well, I actually started working with somebody about 5 years ago, and yesterday she sent me a signed contract.
Yeah, never, ever, ever give up. It doesn't have to take 5 years. It certainly can be 1 week, but it's never too soon to start is the point there. So, Anne Marie, if I shift gears a little bit, what should I do before getting that pre-approval? Like before I come see you, what would be good advice for a member to do before they come to see you?
Well, some of my recommendations would be really watch your credit, make sure that you are not utilizing your credit cards to a large extent. You want to have available credit on your credit cards. You want to make sure that on all of your obligations that you're paying them on time. Those are some of the most important things because credit is an important component. However, it's not always an obstacle. There are certainly ways we can get around it, but I mean, certainly paying your bills on time is the biggest challenge to get around. So, and other than that, I would also recommend that people try to put some money aside or see if there's money that's available through their 401k if they have one that they can withdraw for their down payment or their, down payment, prepaids and closing costs.
So certainly having, as a member looking to get pre-approved, having a good understanding of where your liabilities and your assets are today, where you're in, and even if you don't have a lot of assets today, that's okay. But just understanding the picture and coming and meeting with somebody like Anne Marie, one of our loan officers here, and really looking for the prescription of how do I get where I want to be. And like I said, it is always a challenge if you never make contact, but once you make contact, then it just becomes something to overcome and to get where you need to be. So all good points. Anne-Marie, can we just stay on you for a second? I know we touched on a little bit, and I see a question in the chat box, but what are some of the first-time homebuyer programs a little more in detail? And then where would somebody go to get more information?
Well, our most popular first-time homebuyer program is the MSHDA program with down payment assistance, and there is information at michigan.gov. That MSHDA has their own page in the michigan.gov website, and then you can get a list of counselors there, and you can always sign up for the home buyer counseling. And that's an excellent way to get information on the home buying process and also on the the mortgage process as well. Some of the other programs we have FHA is an excellent program for first-time home buyers. It offers a lot of flexibilities. It's a 3.5% down program, and it allows for higher debt ratios than many of the conventional programs, and also for MSHDA. So that if you do have a little bit of debt that you have to deal with and that you can't get rid of, we do potentially have options. And I do always want to mention that I never tell people no. I always give people a plan. If we can't qualify them now, what is it that we have to get to in order to get you into the home that you want? Because there's always potential for home ownership in the future, even if it's not right now.
Yeah, it's never no. It may be not yet, but it's never no. If we do the things that we need to do. And there's a couple of conventional programs too that Fannie and Freddie offer too that can allow you to get in for reduced down too also, right? Home Possible and Home Ready.
Yeah, so one of the advantages of those is that if you're putting a low down payment, you're going to be subject to monthly mortgage insurance. And under the Home Possible and Home Ready programs for Freddie and Fannie, it lowers that monthly mortgage insurance, which can help increase your affordability.
Yeah. So, my advice would be don't panic. There's several programs out there today, depending on your needs, and understand whether MSHDA is a product that you may need or want or applies to your situation. And you can use MSHDA both conventionally and with FHA. It's a grant that works with mortgages, and there's some municipality ones that we work with out on our website too, if you want to check that out. So, all right, Michelle, I didn't forget you were here. So, I know you said it takes about you said 5 houses you think is the average before you find the one you really like?
And then once you find the house that you like, the process is that you put an offer on it, you negotiate back and forth with the seller. When you get a signed contract from that point on, it's usually 45 to 60 days to actually close the deal and own the home.
Yeah. And so let's say I've looked at my 5 houses, how do I know the house that I'm buying, that it's priced right and I'm not paying too much, or maybe somebody's going to renege. How do I know all that? Like what's going to happen that'll reassure me through that process?
And you need to know that before you put an offer in on the house. So your realtor can look at past sales in the area and understand what the pricing is for those homes, and that helps prepare you for the appraisal as well. If you have a realtor that looks at the sales in the area and understands what the price of homes are, then you can decide whether it's even worth it before you make an offer on the house.
Yeah. I do want to address one thing I just saw in the chat box, and I apologize. MSHDA is the Michigan State Housing Development Authority. So it's MSHDA, MSHDA. I forget we use acronyms, so that's on me. I shouldn't have said that, but Michigan State Housing Development Authority. So, all right. So now I've found a house and I've bought it. What are you going to need for me? What is an EMD and how does that work?
So an EMD is short for earnest money deposit, and it's a good faith deposit that you put down. Your buyer's broker would hold that deposit. And it's usually typically between 1% and 2% of the purchase price of the home. If you renege on a signed contract, the seller could get your EMD, or likewise, if they can't complete the sale, there's repercussions for them as well. But that the EMD is held and it's deducted from your cost at closing. So it's just a deposit on the home in addition to the down payment.
So once you come to terms in the purchase agreement and everybody signs, instead of a handshake, it's an actual financial commitment you make, like some pre-money, a deposit. And that is in play. If one of the parties don't act on the contract, you could be forfeiting that money potentially.
And you could be forfeiting the money. So you need to be sure that this is the house that you want. And besides just the earnest money deposit, I mean, if you don't follow through on a contract, there's legal repercussions. So you need to be sure that it's what you want before you make an offer on a house. And also one other point I wanted to add is that there's certain neighborhoods in Detroit that are slated for revitalization, and they're part of the state's NEZ program. It's the neighborhood empowerment zones. And your realtor can tell you whether a house that you're looking at, or can tell you what areas do have NEZ affiliation, and then your tax is decreased significantly. So that's another way that a realtor could assist you with the taxes are a significant portion of your purchase.
Yeah, for a period of time, sometimes like a 10-year zone, right? Like it could be 10 years of low taxes to really allow you to build up in that area.
In Detroit and some other areas, it's 15, and then they think they extended people that had not sold their houses that were still living in them.
Wow.
So, for example, I just sold a house in the Jefferson-Chalmers area of Detroit, and the previous owner didn't know about the NEZ or the tax abatement. You have to put something like $500 into renovating a house, and then you apply, and then you can become eligible. But she didn't even know about it, so she hadn't taken advantage of it. So,
yeah. Thank you, Anne Marie. So we just talked about kind of the real estate process. What all parties or professional parties are involved in the home buying process? I know I've certainly have a realtor and a loan officer today, but who else gets involved in that process?
There's obviously the seller who owns the home, which can be an individual who lives there, or it could be, or owns a home, or it could be a business entity. And then there's also the title company, which they're going to be facilitating the closing, but prior to closing, they're going to ensure that there are no outstanding liens against the property. You want to make sure that you have a prior lien position, and that there is no one else that might have an interest in the property that's not involved, that is not involved in the selling of the property. So they're a very important component. In addition,
go ahead.
There would be a mortgage insurance company that the lender would deal with. So if you were to be paying mortgage insurance on a conventional mortgage, part of your payment would be going to pay that private mortgage insurance company.
Yeah, we could probably do a whole call just on the different payment types. But so let me recap a little bit. Title insurance insures liens against the property for both the seller and the buyer and the lender. So there's a title insurance policy that's paid at closing. There is mortgage insurance that the buyer pays that, or couldn't be part of your payment, that ensures your part of your down payment that you didn't make. So if you put 3% down or 5% down or 10% down, anything less than 20%, it insures that gap in case there's any issues. And then there's home insurance, right? So then there's insurance you must get on your home to protect against anything that's going to happen in the future, like act of nature or theft or damage or any of those things. So a lot of insurance partners involved in the process. But again, another reason you want to choose a couple professionals like Michelle and Anne Marie to actually be your partner in this transaction. So if we just talked about all the different parties that are involved, Michelle, why would I need to get a home inspection on the property?
A home inspection tells you before you buy the house and typically, real estate contracts give you a period of time, like 5 or 7 days, to hire a private inspector that you pay for, and they thoroughly go through the home. It takes like 3 to 4 hours. They test every function in the house. They make sure it's structurally sound. They look at the roof. And they go point by point through the house. They'll give you a report. And if there's issues that are major issues that need to be repaired, then you negotiate with the seller, or you can demand that they make all the repairs, or you can negotiate with them. And if you are not happy after the inspection, you can refuse to go through with the contract. That's your legal out period, those 7 days or whatever it is.
Yeah, provided you put that contingency in your contract, correct?
Yeah, the contracts are fairly standard and legally reviewed by like the Michigan Association of Realtors, and they pretty much have a inspection contingency. And I never recommend that my clients do not or waive inspection. I recommend that they all get inspections, because you need to know whether the house is sound or not. And these days, certain areas with a lot of trees, they'll do sewer scopes along with it. They'll do radon testing if you choose those options. The sewer scope's important because sewer repairs are thousands of dollars.
Yeah, if you have to clean out all the weed or the tree roots out of your sewers, for sure. So yeah, and we're buying the largest investment of our life. We want to know that it's gonna not shock us on day two. I mean, you sometimes have to be temper your concerns a little bit, because you are buying a home of age. There's going to be some things that need to be maintained, and be aware of them, but you just don't want any big surprises when you do that. So that's a great advice. So we are, believe it or not, right at the end of our call. I can't believe how far along we are in this. So I really want to make sure we get our opportunity for our experts here to talk to us about their 3 takeaways. So I'm going to have Anne-Marie start. So Anne, what's the 3 things you want our members to take away from today's call?
Well, it's very important before you start the home buying process to have a pre-approval. Today's market is extremely competitive, and in the time that you get your pre-approval done, a home that you're interested in could already be gone, is one of the big things. Number 2, you just want to make sure that you have a program that's best for you. Whenever I start with a member, I speak to them and kind of do a little interview to determine what program is going to be in their best interest, and which is going to be the easiest for them to qualify for, and which is going to be the lowest payment for them. And my final takeaway is just, it's important to use Michigan First Credit Union for your mortgage financing needs. We are extremely devoted to our membership. And if anyone has any questions throughout the home buying process, our loan officers are always available for them. We are some of the most competitive. We have some of the most competitive rates and closing costs in the industry.
Yeah. I tell anybody that'll listen, especially if you're a first-time homebuyer, do not worry about the rate right now. Just worry about finding out what you can afford and what the process looks like and how you go through that. And the more prepared and educated our members are in the process, the better it is for everyone. So that would be great takeaways, Anne-Marie. And Michelle, what about you from the realtor perspective? What are the 3 things you'd like them to take away?
Oh, besides the loan rate, and by the way, I bought my first house in the 90s, and my loan rate was, I think, around 9%. And but still I managed to build wealth on that home and sell it for a significant profit. The home market has been competitive lately because home prices, like the supply of home prices has dropped, but it's turning now, and so it's becoming better for buyers. Like at the lowest point, we had 1.6 months of supply, and that was in January of 2022. And today it's up to 3.3 months of supply. So it's becoming easier for buyers. But when you have a realtor, you have a trained professional that is legally committed to fight on your behalf to find the right home for you and at the best terms possible for the home buyer or whoever you represent. And the real estate agent is someone who can guide you through this, confusing process. It's complicated. And just someone that will help you, buy a home at the right price and to help you start building wealth. That's so important for people.
Great. Well, listen, I want to thank you both for coming today. Michelle, Anne-Marie, we appreciate your time. For those of you on the call, if you have questions about the info series, our webinar info series, you can email us at info@michiganfirstmortgage.com. To apply, if you're ready to apply at our website, you can find any of our qualified loan officers at michiganfirst.com/mortgage, or you can call 800 24 hours a day, our 800 number, 7 days a week, and press mortgage and speak to one of those loan officers. If you like and want to talk to Amy directly, there's her direct communication line, and email and cell phone number. And if you want to reach out to Michelle Martin at Keller Williams Realty, it's 313-510-4269 or Michelle Martin at kw.com. So thank you all again jumping in today. And again, if you ask a question in the chat box, we'll definitely get back to you. And remember, if you're looking for homeowners insurance, we do have Michigan First Insurance Agencies. For those of you, I think, are first-time home buyers today, it's a great place to get a competitive quote. And if you own a home and you're shopping around, give Michigan First a try. So thank you all for coming today, and we appreciate you, and we'll talk to you again next month. Thank you.
Thank you.